Mic check. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seat, please, as we are going to begin very soon. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seat as we're going to begin very soon. We're going to begin very soon. So for the guests at the online streaming, please bear with us as our guests take their seat. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to the launch of the Singapore Book Data. I'm Melvin, the chairperson of the Singapore Book Data and the honorary secretary, assistant secretary of the Singapore Book Publisher Association. Welcome to all our friends from the industries, whether you're from the library, the bookstores, the online e-commerce, publishers, readers, authors, and also to our friends online watching now from their home. Thank you for sparing the time for this very important milestone of the launch of the Singapore Book Data. There's something that we didn't really share with one of our partners. To our partner Enterprise of Singapore, you knew that we actually started this project 2 years ago, but we actually started this 10 years ago. This project took 3 leadership under the SBPA. Under Ms. Trina Ong, it was conceptualized in July 2012. Under Mr. Peter Schoppert, who put this concept in paper, and the leadership of under Mr. Max Pua, who materialized this project. This is a very important milestone as our publishing industry is actually at the infancy stage of book information flow. And this will definitely help to promote more titles around the world. We are very glad that after 2 years, and the pandemic has really told us that we really need to expedite the process of all this so that we can list our titles online faster with Amazon or Book Depository or any of our online bookstores. And it's not just listing on the online bookstores, but to give greater information to the libraries, to the authors, to the readers, and everyone else in this world. So it's been a very painful 2 years journey, but finally, today, it's up and running. We really want to thank our 2 main supporters, Enterprise of Singapore, who have gracefully funded this project, and the National Library Board, who has contributed most of the data, and all our publishers who will be enhancing this data from today onwards. Today, we have listed 223,000 ISBN from all titles from 2007, and we are slowly adding more titles backlist even before our independence. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time today. And next, I would like to invite our president, Mr. Max Pua, to give his speech. Mr. Max Pua.
Thanks, Melvin. Mr. Ng Chue Pong, Ms. Kit Kerr, dear friends and partners, thank you for taking your precious time on a Saturday and the first weekend of the June holidays to attend this afternoon's launch of the Singapore Book Data platform. Actually, I've been going to Frankfurt for over 20 years, and every time when I walk past the Singapore Pavilion, I get a sense of pride. Not only, of course, the food is good, and there will always be some publishers who will offer nice kueh and food, So after a whole day, you always go to Singapore Pavilion to chit-chat, but you also get a sense of pride. When you see Singapore books in a very international setting. So similar when I go overseas, when I go to bookstores, Barnes and Nobles in New York and all that, sometimes you'll find a Singapore title. And I'll take it out and I'll show my colleagues or my family, hey, Singapore, Singapore authors, Singapore publisher. So you get a sense of pride. So in this digital age, everything is data-driven. So I think this project is very, very important. There are more than 1.5 million books published globally each year. And the books published in Singapore are actually lost among them. So this system enables fast and accurate flow of book data in an international recognized format, the ONEX, from Singapore publishers to online or physical retailers, distributors, booksellers, schools, research institutes, libraries, and all book-related databases, Singapore or locally or internationally. It allows our Singapore books to be more discoverable, helping our publishers reach out to the international markets, and also create a unique place for our Singapore publishing brands. As Melvin mentioned earlier, there are over 200,000 local books in actually 4 different languages now in the platform. As Melvin also mentioned previously, this platform was conceived by former president of SBPA, Ms. Trina Ong, who unfortunately can't attend today's event because she's in the US. And we are extremely proud that her vision has finally been realized. I'd like to thank the chairperson of the Book Data Committee, Melvin Chu, for the tremendous hard work he has done. Our secretariat, headed by Ms. Cecilia Wu, Enterprise Singapore, National Library Board, Singapore Book Council, CLASS, the ASEAN Book Publishers Association, all our partners for supporting this initiative. Moving forward, we really look forward to working with all Singapore publishers and all our partners in the industry after this launch of this platform to make this a national success. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Max. We'd like to invite Mr. Max Paul back to the stage, and our VIPs, Mr. Ng Cheng Po from National Library, and Ms. Kit Kerr from the Enterprise of Singapore. Okay. So we're going to begin the launch of the Singapore Book Data. So later we invite the 3 guests to just press the button on the iPad. Now, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Press the key on the iPad. Okay. Thank you, everybody. You may now take your seat. We just concluded launch, and the website is now live. So please feel free to log into bookdata.sg, and we hope you can discover more of Singapore titles and help to promote Singapore literature. Now we're going to proceed on. The session has not ended. It's a simple launch because we have another important session going up. We're going to invite our speaker, Mr. Rachael from RM Service Marketing from Australia, and Mr. Peter Schoppert, the publisher from NUS Press. Can we invite these 2 speakers up to the stage? So Peter, I leave the stage to you.
Thank you very much, Melvin. Welcome, everybody. I think it's okay to take off mask for, yeah, good. Welcome, everyone, to this event. Very pleased to see you here. And we're very fortunate to have with us to share the journey and of book information from the Australian perspective, Rachael McDiarmid. Now, I first met Rachael on the emails when she was our NUS Press distributor in Australia. But she's been working in Australia in a range of different, we were by far her smallest account, I hasten to add, compared to some of the big name presses around the world, but she's worked in book sales and distribution in Australia and upper management in Australia for 30 years, a while ago. Yes, exactly. Started when she was 5 years old, so she's been in that for a while. Rachael's going to share with us the importance of book information, product information. And I think we'll have some time for Q&A afterwards. In particular, I will be asking her about Australia's journey to professionalizing and getting a flow of book information that supports not only the domestic market, but also powers the export market as well. So, Rachael, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, I'd like to thank Cecilia Wu from the Singapore Book Publishers Association for the formal invitation. Thank you. But also to Peter and Melvin and Gladys from and her colleagues from the Singapore Book Council as well for their assistance. There's quite a few people to thank, but I'm very honoured to be here and thank you for asking me. When Peter first contacted me, he asked me if I would be involved in today's session. And I said to him, what time will the Zoom be? And he said, oh no, we're a bit daring. We want to have it in person. And I was like, oh, okay. And the reason that I asked was that because I'm also teaching book marketing and sales at the University of Sydney this semester. And it was going to be my last lecture. And luckily I was able to get on a plane yesterday, so I could be here today. But when I did talk to him on the phone a little later, I had to laugh because I said, let me get this right. You want me to come to Singapore to talk about the one subject that every publisher hates. And but we should not hate it. It's a fantastic subject. And it's also, I think after this session, we'll realise, about the importance of metadata for sales and marketing, but also to respect it immensely. It has power. It's what we do for a living. And I think that the goal for today is to make sure that everybody has a greater understanding and appreciation for the role of metadata in the supply chain. So this was the actual description of the session today, and about how you can make your books more discoverable and easier to purchase. The foundation of all book marketing is getting your book information right and sending that book information out into the world in good order. How do you manage it? Whose responsibility is it? Yes, everyone, welcome to the wonderful world of book data. And for those of you that are new to book data, we are going to give book data a little bit of a PR makeover. I don't want anyone that's been involved for a while to say, oh, book data, oof. I want you all to say, book data, yeah! Okay, you ready with me? This is participation. So, what is metadata? It's something that we all say, but I did actually want to reference this particular book. When I was asked to talk about book metadata at the Small Press Network in pre-COVID times, this book was actually on the Ingram Spark stand, and it's called Metadata Essentials, Proven Techniques for Book Marketing and Discoverability. And it's actually really, really helpful. And as you can expect, particularly from Ingram, they hit the nail right on the head with the introduction to the book. They actually said that whether you're an author or you're a publisher, metadata, that is, the data that describes and differentiates your book, should be one of your biggest considerations. It's of huge importance to your customers because it brings a book to life. It brings a book to life for the buyer, and it provides important details on what he or she should expect. And titles with incomplete or non-specific metadata result in higher returns and generally lower sales. And that's actually been confirmed in a number of Nielsen book data studies, about the importance of metadata. And I have a link to a couple of these at the end of the presentation. Another simpler description I actually like came from the UK's bookseller, who described it as metadata is all about the consumer, getting that book in front of your potential readers and making it good enough to buy. And I think that's what we need to keep in mind. We need to be thinking about the end user, the reader, but also whether that's a librarian who is, selecting a title for their collection, a bookseller making a decision on what to stock, or even an special order to bring in, or a consumer online who's looking for something to read. We need to point them in the right direction and give them the correct information to make a buying decision. The textbook I'm actually using for my students speaks about the role of metadata, ensuring that bookshops can classify the book into their own system in the right place to help it reach the right people. And it enables measurement and monitoring of sales and trends. In Australia and other countries around the world, we actually rely on Nielsen BookScan, actually. It has a core role in the supply chain, and it tracks and reports on the sell-through of books. And it has a panel that includes online booksellers, bricks and mortar, special sales avenues, and discount department stores. And so what they do is they collect the data and they help publishers make good decisions on what to publish, when to publish, what price to publish it at, and how many to print, among other things. My textbook, which I'll actually reference in a second, says that metadata helps bookshops and end customers understand where the book fits and facilitates the sales process. It is very important to get this right, given the number of new books and new editions that come out every year, the similarity of titles, and the importance of reaching the market. So why did I say it needed a makeover earlier? Well, I think it's historical. But I'll go into that. But I said the response to when we say metadata or that we're working on it, I happened to have a really good discussion last week with two colleagues who also just happened to be affiliated with the International ISBN Agency. And they agreed with me. They said calling it metadata actually doesn't do it justice. It's so much more than that. And it hasn't had the reputation over the years because it was difficult for publishers to know where they should focus their efforts and what they should send out to the rest of the industry and how to send it. And it probably won't surprise you to know that very early on, particularly in Australia, publishers treated metadata with contempt. I thought that was a strong word, but that's actually what one of my colleagues used. He said because publishers were so focused on bricks and mortar, they didn't actually think that they needed any enriched, any sales, any other marketing material. They just wanted to, it was all about that and being able to invoice those books out to that market. They didn't need a subtitle, they didn't need a series, they didn't need some of that information to invoice. Their ERP, their distribution system, wasn't designed at all to handle rich data. I mean, titles were truncated because of character limits. So they had to do a lot of work to get it to the standard of what the supply chain was actually expecting to receive in terms of product information. And they were big changes. They took time and they took effort. And of course, as we know, that equates to money. And as the internet developed and online book selling became bigger, publishers and distributors had to adapt to new ways of managing it for both their internal and their external stakeholders. These days, with online booksellers having the lion's share of the book market, a Publishing Perspectives article only recently talked about Amazon having 50% plus of the American market and at least 75% of their ebook sales. So the focus has well and truly shifted in terms of search and discoverability for books and related products to increase sales. In Australia, Booktopia is one of our dominant online booksellers, and they have championed bibliographic data and price and availability services for years. Their partnership with Nielsen for bibliographic information is an important one. I don't think publishers treat it with contempt anymore. I actually think they are much more respectful of it and the power that it has. And I'm not joking when I say this, but I have worked with thousands and thousands of publishers, particularly when I was at James Bennett and looking after a supply chain. Actually, I should say James Bennett / Blackwell / Baker and Taylor / YBP, depending on who owned us at the time. And these days I run my own business that provides outsourcing and consulting to publishers and distributors. And ProQuest just happens to be one of my clients. I do publisher relations for them for their eBook Central platform. And metadata workflows and issues coming up, it doesn't go away. It's still something that happens, but I think the way that publishers respond to it now, it's a much more urgent discussion. It's a much more important discussion because they want to get it right. And we talk about improving systems and improving data workflows all the time. We talk about what is the most efficient way to manage it and to distribute it. And there are software solutions, there are cloud-based solutions, there are people now that can help. And that's a great improvement on yesteryear, I must say. These days we know and understand how important it is for sales and marketing. And of course, that's my focus. And I think it's a little bit confusing because over years, people didn't know what metadata actually was. Was it IT? Didn't IT look after it? Is it the database people? Is it data? Is it tech? Well, if you have Onyx in your organisation, they may handle some of that, but we'll talk about who's responsible shortly. But at the end of the day, it really shouldn't be a chore to manage. After all, it is describing what we sell. It's what we do for a living. We sell books. And metadata helps your customers discover your books. It's product information and it's the product specs that we take to the market. It's our very own business. So see how we will react to metadata in future? Yeah. Full marks, Peter. David Shelley, the CEO of Hachette, actually said, optimising your metadata is probably the single thing all publishers can currently most effectively do on a day-to-day basis to really move the needle on most titles' sales. I was quite flabbergasted, not at what he said, which is absolutely true, but he was actually quoting me. He was referencing me in the foreword of the 6th edition of How to Market Books, which is published by Routledge. And it's a great book. It's a wonderful text and reference. And all of the contributors to the book were asked for their one big tip in terms of marketing. And my tip just happened to be, know your metadata. And it still is. And that's what Howie was responding to me. Not that a textbook on marketing would actually be focused on metadata, but that's the world that we live in. So we've just heard from none other than, oh, I just realised I had it on the wrong slide. So we just heard from David Shelley, the CEO of Hachette, that providing rich, enhanced data, optimising your data, can move the dial on sales. That's a pretty good thing, isn't it? So metadata isn't, metadata. Metadata is what? It's good. Thumbs up. Good. Okay. Metadata is good. See? Smiley face. Yes, you didn't know it was group participation. I actually tried that with my students last week. And that we happened to be talking about metadata and managing inventory. And I kept saying to them, metadata is good. And I had to laugh when I saw the chat, when I downloaded the chat afterwards, and some of the students had wrote, metadata, yeah, exclamation mark. And I thought, the younger people get it. And I think that's the thing. They get it because that's the world that they live in. They understand it, and that's what puts a smile on my face. So are your books discoverable? Discoverability has been a buzzword for a long time, and it should be. So especially, can someone successfully search and find your book in the digital age? Every piece of metadata you provide plays an important role in increasing discoverability and sales. And as a marketer, it's brutal to say, but if you can run the best publicity and marketing campaign in the world, but if no one can find your books, your campaign has failed. So discoverability is absolutely critical, and whether that's online, whether it's in a bibliographic or price and availability database, or in a library catalogue. If people can't find it, consumers need to be able to find it. And we're in a very digital world these days. They expect to find it. I actually stand by it every time a new client comes to me for a marketing project. If they don't actually have an efficient way to get their book data out into the world, I actually reconsider taking them on as a client. Okay. So, I understand why it can still be difficult for authors and publishers to know where they can focus their efforts, and metadata is most important, and what metadata is most important. But remember to think about it from the consumer perspective. They want to be engaged. They want to see as much information as possible. They want to find out what's new from their favourite authors, what's new in their genre that they love reading. We need to help them navigate by giving them an accurate preview of the content of the books through the metadata that's provided. Okay, so getting your book information right. Creating good metadata, actually on the last slide, I apologise, takes time, but when you put in the hard work and provide enhanced information, you'll be left with a great sales and marketing tool. Actually, I do need to go back, I'm sorry. Okay. Bayot Barblin, who's one of the colleagues I spoke with last week, is actually the chair of the International ISBN Agency. And he kindly shared with me a few good analogies for metadata. I won't use his online dating one, and I won't use his, he said, if you were looking to buy a bottle of wine, would you buy one without a label? But I did like his analogy on real estate. If you were looking for real estate to buy online, and it just said 3 bedrooms, kitchen, living/dining, it's not really going to draw you in, is it? But you add photos, add a video, very exciting, a floor plan, or even more exciting, a floor plan that actually has dimensions. I'm actually looking for a property at the moment, and dimensions are really important. It might have the size of the whole property. It might tell you about when the house was built. It might tell you about the size of the public transport in the area, nearby schools, that might be important to you, expected council rates, and so on and so forth. It gives you enough information to make a buying decision, whether you want to rent it or to buy it or not, because they've given you the information there. So let's apply this to books and what we should be looking at in terms of metadata. Okay. There are a lot of different data elements, and every presentation or book I've read about data has a different opinion on what is important. I've seen vendor and distributor guidelines, and it's different, I think, for the US market, only slightly, But here's one from Ingram Spark that you can actually find on the web, and it's referenced in that Metadata Essentials book that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. They actually have all of the things, the contributor, the title, the series, description. But I don't know if you can read this very well. I expect people online will. HTML markup. What do they say in that markup? Look closely. It says metadata is the best. Metadata. And then, of course, they've got seriously, metadata is the best. So we do have checklists. And of course, then we need to go through actually what are the key data elements that you should be looking out for. The ISBN, of course, is the primary identifier. That's where we start. The book title and subtitle are separate fields. Edition is an important field to help consumers buy the right and most recent edition. You want to return the search, return a search that is the correct edition. You don't want the consumer to buy the wrong book. Contributor roles are important. Ensure author names are put in exactly as they are spelt. Be consistent. Actually, I cannot stress that enough. If they have a middle name or a middle initial, use it every single time because it helps with linking records online. It will help with discoverability, whether that's an author, an editor, an illustrator. Linking is really important. Publication date is important, particularly if your title slips. You need to let the trade know when a book is coming out. Likewise with status, if a book is reprinting or out of print. I don't know, do we still have out of print in the days of POD? But if it does, you need to give an indication of it, all the way from not yet published to out of print. Format, hardback, ISBN, paper ISBN, etc. Ensure you provide the right format information and ensure your formats line up, because if someone searches for your book and they put in the particular information, they want to see the ebook, the audio book, the hardback, the paperback, etc. So ensure your formats are consistent and that your data on associated products is discoverable. But I don't know if it's the same in Singapore, but one thing that's important about formats, for example, in Australia, is that if you're in library supply, for example, you may have library profiles that say, I don't want spiral bound. So the buyers in those areas will be actually looking really, really closely at that. Price, absolutely vital. Page count, well, it helps with buying decisions. Recently, I've bought quite a few books that I didn't realise how big they were when they came to me. Yeah, they were 1,000 pages. A lot more investment of time. But on the other side, I have some of the more enriched marketing-related elements, and we'll delve into description, keywords, and subject classifications in a bit. But when I think about metadata, actually one phrase comes to mind. It's not rocket science. Think about it. Your organisation has been talking about these books for a long time. You've been at the publishing meeting. You know that the format, what the format's going to be. It's been costed on a certain binding, it's a certain page count, certain illustrations. You know who the author is, the illustrator is. Those sorts of things. You've actually been talking about that book right up to that point. You just need to spell it out now and put it in your data. You know, the title and the subtitle, they may change during that process. The manuscript may come in at a little bit less than what was anticipated, but you can change that. That's okay. And of course, the cover. Let's not forget the cover. You've probably all had some input on the cover. You can pretty much summarise the book in terms of metadata if you are asked for it. So we do talk about it, and metadata is making it concrete so others can talk about it. And so buyers are going to be interested in what your book's about, and there are lots of fields available to you. Table of contents, back cover blurbs, country of publication, author affiliations, the language, translations, currencies, and so on and so forth. I've only just touched the surface. Otherwise, with over 200 data elements that are picked up in Onyx alone, it would be a very long presentation. But what would you say would be your most important sales and marketing tools? Well, two things. It's the cover, which is a visual enticement to buy, and it's book information, which is engaging content, it's keywords in book titles and the description to give a consumer more information to make that buying decision. But let's talk covers for a minute. Okay. A cover image is incredibly important when we come to talking about metadata. Not having one does impact sales, as multiple white papers and research has shown. As you would expect, Nielsen has done multiple studies. Nielsen Book Data is, of course, the ISBN agency in the UK and the owner of BookScan, and they're in a unique position to do this sort of research and to see the importance of supplying a cover image. Their research has clearly shown that the importance of titles that do not hold all the required data elements, it's the presence of a cover that correlates with average sales over twice as high. However, providing more metadata elements and an image correlates with an even higher average sales per ISBN value. In a nutshell, they have shown us that 15% of records fall short of providing basic requirements. And their data set used the top 100,000 selling books. So we're looking at active titles in the market. It's 15%. Not a very good figure for this day and age. We should be doing better. There's also a Canadian study, which I do have referenced as well. And it was presented at the International Supply Chain Seminar. And they confirmed the Nielsen research in their market. They looked at 20,000 titles as opposed to the 100,000 from Nielsen. And they also confirmed that the presence of a cover image before the publication date significantly increased sales for lower selling authors. And it has a significant impact on medium and high volume publishers and top selling authors. While we're on covers, one of the best independent bookshops in Australia is Avid Reader. If you get to Brisbane, make sure you check them out. Their buyer shared with me the main issue she had with publishers' metadata. And yes, it related to the cover. She said, but the only thing that would really stop me from ordering a missing cover image, the only thing that would really stop me from ordering is a missing cover image. I want to know a book will look good enough to be picked up from the customer, and if the publisher doesn't care enough about this book to upload an image, then why should I? Again, brutal. Australians. But I do have some advice for you about covers. If you are still changing your cover and you release the cover into the online world too early, trying to replace it later, it can be really, really difficult. And that reason is you've already supplied often the file name, isbn.jpg. When the data washes over some systems, they know that there's a file already there. It's like a manual push that you have to actually get it to be fixed. And so try and make sure that when you release your cover to the world, it's pretty much your final cover. Otherwise, you'll go online and you'll see all different versions. It's not a great experience for the consumer. And I guess another tip, if particularly when we're talking about online discoverability, you've probably covered this before, but you have to imagine how the cover looks on the web and how to make it attractive. If it's a white cover, it's going to get lost. You need to be thinking about a thumbnail. Have an interesting border, something that identifies it on the screen a little bit better. But like other data elements, get it right the first time. Data, tomato, I don't know. Get it right the first time when you possibly can. It saves any grief later. Did that change? Yes. Okay. So I actually, seeing it was a children's festival as such, I actually wanted to use this example as to bring today. Inside Story, the wonderful world of writing, illustrating and publishing children's books, has been a special project from the United Publishers of Armidale, which is in northern New South Wales. So I just used it there as a little bit of a guide to hope. I've actually got a copy if anyone's actually interested in it. But while we do a quick refresh, the metadata should always reflect what is on the cover and on the title page. It's a no-brainer. This is what it should reflect. Ensure the cover you have on your own website matches what you supply your metadata partners. Makes sense, right? Subtitle, series, edition, format, they're all separate fields. I can't begin to tell you the amount of times I've seen publishers try and put them in one field. It's what we call dirty data, and it has no consistency, it's incorrect, and it's terribly recorded. Contributor roles are important to get right, and as I said, they help link the books online. Be consistent and be accurate. They would be my biggest recommendations. The other thing is keywords. For those that sat in the workshop this morning about thema, it was fun, wasn't it? It was very good. Thank you, Peter. And keywords is also something incredibly important when we're talking about metadata. This is where the fun is, really, I think. Nielsen's confirmed it in their various white papers as well. A book's description is a major purchasing influence, as are keywords. Keywords can be single words on longer phrases. And there are actually documents available from the Book Industry Study Group and others about managing keywords. Plus, there's a whole lot of online tools, and I've got some links at the end. But here's a recommendation from Nielsen themselves. Generally, the more words that appear within a book's keywords field, the greater the average sale, and that a book should aim to have a minimum of 30 words in its keyword element. I've also seen other recommendations. Ingram Spark, I think, encourages their authors to do 7 keywords. I've seen Amazon recommend 100. Find the right balance for your books. Just remember to be selective, targeted, and specific. The right place at the right time. This quote again is from courtesy of Ingram Spark, and it's on their blog. There's a lot of advice out there, and if you actually follow some of these blog posts, they're really, really interesting and educational. But this one I quite liked because it said, quality metadata can make the difference between achieving a sale or missing out on an opportunity to reach a reader. To search engines, all words have a value, and keywords and phrases have even more value still. Your task is to strategically select keywords that best describe your book and place them in the right spots around the web. So they've given an example there about if your book is about the best hiking spots in Colorado and someone types that into their web browser, they may not have known what they are looking for, or they may not have known they were looking for a book, but they've seen it. You don't know what you're looking for. You don't know what you don't know. But they could potentially make a sale just for being in the right place at the right time. Sometimes people don't know what they're looking for and they find it. So I've said this before, particularly with search engine optimization for SEO, you have to maximize discoverability. And you should really be thinking about ways to attract a reader's attention. And you need to attract it, through the description and provide as much information as you can without going overboard and losing focus. Whatever your description, it should accurately describe what is inside the book. And you will also be looking at ways to do different types of descriptions, long and short descriptions, because they're utilised differently by various online retailers, distributors, and within book databases. I've seen recommendations between 200 and 4,000 characters for a description. But think about words that are compelling, will attract your readers, and think about the structure of your descriptions. You start with your headline that's worded well. The elevator pitch as such. It's what you've been practicing since you've been talking about this title at your publishing meetings. You know how you're going to sell it and what the key phrases are. How are you marketing the book in one sentence? Can you market your book in one sentence? What are your reps using to describe it? Quickly, but to the point. It's there to draw attention. And then you follow that with a solid description covering the keywords, the key themes, characters, plot summaries, etc. If it's fiction, it might be place, other sorts of things if it's non-fiction. Think about your back cover blurb. What's interesting about the book? What's it about? Cover the reasons someone would be interested in it. And then you give it a good close. What's your call to action? Is there a powerful endorsement? Is there an award that you can reference? You've got to give them a compelling reason to buy. And remember, these bits of information are going to be picked up by the crawlers, the Google search index, and they all contribute to improving SEO. And so we have search and discoverability in our favour. So we did this morning with Thema. So we did have a look at this, but for those that weren't there, let's talk subject classifications. Avoid using general codes where you can, why you think a general code may or will increase the overall reach for a book. Being specific helps importantly, especially with online and in-store merchandising. With Thema, you can drill down to the subject classification that best matches your book. And you got a lot of subcategories, as we saw this morning. How many of you kept seeing that asterisk and realised that it kept going? It's a wonderful tool. Is it 2,000, 2,500, 3,000? I thought, yeah. So there's a lot of subcategories to choose from. And if you use your category heading, it will help you drill down to the right one for your book. But take care always to distinguish between similar headings. For example, true crime is not the same as criminology. Be specific. If you categorise a book in fiction, fantasy, historical category will be discoverable in fiction and fantasy already. Only choose one of the general categories if your book has a wide scope and is about a very broad topic. Remember, you've also got descriptions and keywords as a way to enrich your data. And you should be thinking about how those various fields can drive sales. Speaking of, Penguin Random House talked to me about a data enriching exercise that they did. It was several hundred books. And for example, they went to reclassify them. So instead of it being just a general history, they selected things like Georgian history. They were very, very specific. And I think it was about 300 books that they did this exercise for. So they got specific, so readers could find exactly what they were looking for quicker. And yes, they saw an uptake in sales. Remember, metadata is good. Okay. Yeah, another smiley face. Okay. So who is responsible for metadata? I had to laugh again. When I was preparing for this, I actually Googled that question just to see what other people thought. And the first Google search happened to be me. I was talking to Australian Books and Publishing's self-publisher site about marketing, and my picture actually appeared, and I was like, oh, what did I say? So I was actually effectively answering my own question. But it was in the discussion that I'd had with them about book marketing. I said, if you talk to marketing, they think it's the publishing team. If you talk to operations, they think it's marketing. If you talk to sales, they think it's IT. Just mention Onyx and see where the discussion goes. Metadata is the responsibility of everyone in the organisation, and every person has a core role to play. That was a few years ago. I'll stand by that quote. I think it's still very accurate. Everyone in an organisation, big and small, is responsible for metadata because it is how your catalogue is displayed to the world. One of the questions today was when to send metadata out. So again, I think there's probably some guidance today from the Singapore market, but I think the answer is somewhere between what bibliographic organisations like Nielsen say and what a publisher wants to do. When are you taking pre-orders? Have you set it up with your distributors? Have you added it to your website? How far in advance do you want to alert your competitors that you are publishing said title? And there is what is referred to as the Big Basic Standard, which motivates publishers to supply information sufficiently in advance of publication. And the key motivation for this is that to ensure booksellers and library vendors have access to the data that they need to discover, order and manage forthcoming titles, so they can be available to the market effectively upon publication. And of course, that has a flow-on effect for consumers down the line. In the UK, the product record should have all the basic data elements 16 weeks in advance of publication date, which is represented as 112 days. In Australia and New Zealand, we tend to do the 4-month sell-in as well, so 3 to 4 months depending on the publisher. I guess we can talk about that, Peter, as well. So timeliness for the market in Singapore is something I'll leave for the others to advise on. Okay. Metadata matters. So managing the flow of book information is really important. Metadata helps bookshops, libraries, and consumers understand where the book fits. It helps the sales process, being able to find your book when lots of books are being released, or books with similar titles, or identifying new editions, and so on. It's about discoverability. Metadata is the detail that puts other data into context and gives it more meaning. It's about the consumer. It's about getting your book in front of your potential readers and making it look good enough to buy. Make your book discoverable to consumers by ensuring accurate metadata that describes and differentiates your book, and always remember that an incomplete record will impact sales. Before I sign off, how do you react when someone says metadata? No. It is the marketing investment of the digital age. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. It occurred to me when Rachael started her talk, she said, incomplete metadata leads to high returns. And it occurred to me that there are two types of people in the world. There's one group of people says, high returns are good, right? I invest, I want high returns. But those of us in the book trade and selling books know that the way our business works is we send books to bookshops and we give them the right to return them back to us. So it's a very different meaning. So incomplete book data means the bookshops don't know what they're getting, and so you have a higher chance that they come back. Yeah, which means lower returns on your investment, unfortunately. So I'm going to ask the first question or two, but if anybody has any further questions about metadata. Rachael, do you have a sense of how the professionalization of metadata developed in Australia? I mean, where did it start? Was it the library supply side? Was it the bookshops? When did it get going?
Assuming this is on? Yes, it is. I actually think the key thing to Australia was exactly what you're doing now, was when the Australian Publishers Association did Title Page. That got everyone talking, and there was a lot of investment, a lot of time, a lot of project work for them to find a system or a workflow that would, and that was Onyx, but to get their data into, I think Title Page was the main thing. I don't actually think it was Nielsen or anything else that came before it. Having a price and availability service was really important to the Australian market.
Right. And that's exactly why we've been working on this for 10 years and with the help of our partners to do this. I think for Singapore publishers, our book trade and our distributors did so much work on our behalf of categorizing the books, and we only really felt it when ebooks came along. Because when you're uploading an ebook to a Kindle store or Amazon or Overdrive or whoever it might be, we had to provide all of that information in a systematic way. And I think that was the first for a lot of us to understand that we have to gather all of this stuff together. There's lots of stuff to do for marketing, okay? Yeah. And how do you make sure that your metadata effort also feeds into then the more bespoke promotions and marketing that you can do? And is there a feedback
Oh, there is
cycle?
an easy question to that. Every time that I'm actually doing a marketing campaign and I'm working with an author or a publisher, and I want them to probably direct books to a particular site. If they can't find it on Amazon or Booktopia or online or Dimmix or any of the chains or any of the independent stores, there's a problem. So I think that even just finding a URL, but just search and discoverability. Yeah.
So that's a great test. Any of your marketing, any of your promotions efforts have to lead to an action. And so that action's got to be driven by, I'm typing it into a search engine of whatever sort.
Yeah.
I'm finding the book.
And then the other thing is making sure it's in Australia, making sure it's in title page, making sure it's with the ISBN agency, so it's in books in print, and also for Nielsen Book Data. So we also have to do the three as such, because BookScan is so important to the Australian market. So we have to have it listed in their database as well.
Okay, so BookScan, just to be clear, because we don't have BookScan in Singapore, BookScan gives us sales figures for categories of books.
Oh, for ISBN level.
Even at ISBN level. So I can go in and look at a competitor's book,
Yeah.
and I can find out how well it sold.
Yes.
Right. We've tried to introduce this in Singapore, just for background for everybody. We brought Nielsen to Singapore to meet the booksellers and the publishers. A bit tough. The mentality is not sharing information. So what happens is the bookstores actually get a little device attached to their point of sales that collects the data. And so they get the benefit of not only knowing what's selling in their shops, but what's selling across the whole country.
And what the price it's selling at. So they can also see, even from the bestseller lists, what their price is, what others have sold, and they can be more competitive. Or something selling all around the place and they don't actually have it in their shop, they'll order it in.
Yeah, so we're not quite there yet in Singapore. We, as the association, will keep trying, keep talking to the retailers. National Library Board has been very kind to start to show us a bit more of the loans data. Because if we don't have the sales data, well, let's find out how people are borrowing books. And so that's been really useful for us to get a window on that side of the book. 30 million book loans, 30 plus, right? 35 plus 10 million digital. So it's a great window on the activity as well. All right. Any more questions on book data and then anything from we've got some people on the stream as well, so we'll keep an eye out for questions there. Keywords. 30 keywords? Wow. I was so proud of our team for getting 7 keywords for the last 2 years of books, you know.
I think, oh yes,
help me figure out how to get more.
There's actually a whole lot of sites that you can see, but also things like, look at what people are doing on BookTok or Instagram, social media. What are the hashtags that are being used? They might not be what you think they are, but they can also help you develop your keywords. Plus, Google has a whole range of tools, and Google keywords. Think about it as search engine optimization. So if you're looking at SEO, making sure your book is discoverable, go online and use some of the tools. There's actually quite a few, actually.
Yeah, that's a great point. So you could use search engine keyword searches to actually inspire, because after all, it's going to feed back. Yeah, they're all going to feed back into that. I remember, yes, Catherine, question. Please, yes, just a word. If you have a question, please use the mic, because we do have an audience on streaming, so they won't be able to hear you unless you go to the mic. Thanks very much.
Hi, I'm Catherine Koo, publisher, and I have a question which is actually related to the Singapore market. Yeah, okay. Now, I'm a small publisher, all right? I'm not McGraw-Hill or, the bigger publishers, yeah? NUS Press, yeah? So, taking on a data system, metadata, there's a lot of work for us to do, considering we don't publish that many books, yeah? I know in Singapore we have like the National Library Board, because I mean, they are the ones that buy most of the books, I guess, if we do sell, if we don't export. And I'm thinking, is there a way we can work with the National Library Board? Because categorizing is a big thing. for small publishers. We can't do so much work. We don't have that many people do so much work. So is there any way we can work around this with the bigger, with the stat boards or with NLB? Yeah, that's my question, which probably
Maybe
NLB can answer.
Well, I'll tackle that first, and NLB can say more if you like. So, well, the first thing is that we are actually collaborating with NLB on the book data. So the information is flowing now, beginning to flow back and forth. And the idea is that we'll increase the richness of the information as it flows. Of course, the NLB catalogs our books for the purposes of library cataloging. And that's actually a source of information that you should use. You should put the number, the Dewey or the Library of Congress for if you're being cataloged overseas, you should put that number in your metadata too, because if you're selling to libraries, that helps them understand what the book is. The bookshops might not know it, but the others do. So that flow of information is there. We did have participants in our seminar on book categories today from the library, and that was kind of what was interesting is the two worlds. The librarians have been doing this for 500 years, right? So a very deep sense of knowledge. So we have a lot to learn from each other as we become more interested in doing this work. We have a lot to learn from library on cataloging. So it was great to be in the same room and to talk about through different cases today. I think there's another point though that Rachel, I will take from Catherine's question. It's a good point, right? It's very hard if you're publishing 10 books a year to have a system to manage all of this book data. How do you do that? How do you manage that book data if you're a smaller publisher?
I've actually seen, I know it sounds odd, but I've seen small presses do really good things just in Excel. In Australia, I think the Australian Publishers Association also did a deal with some online or some cloud-based solutions. But that's probably more if you've probably got 100 to 200 books. And they actually then were able to export an Onyx file or an Excel file. So I actually have seen small presses do it well in Excel. But yes, it is a challenge for a small press.
Yeah, there's also a software out there called Airtable, which is a kind of super-powered Excel online, which handles graphics and things like that really easily and can export data. So the goal is also for publishers that the book data portal, bookdata.sg, is also, the basic information will be there. You put more information there. You can also export that to use for other purposes, to send to your ebook partners and your other suppliers. So hopefully the book data platform itself will also help you better enrich and manage it as well. But you probably need a spreadsheet or some kind of database to start with. The key is to be organized about it from the start.
Yeah, actually, if you get it saves a lot of heartache if you get it right from the beginning. Because also, if you don't complete all the different fields and then suddenly you're asked for them, having to go back and use, then everyone goes, metadata. But you don't want to have that. You want to say, let's get it right from the first time. Let's be consistent. But I've also seen small presses use Excel and then create, I can't remember what they're called, like shortcuts. You know, like when you're sending an Excel file off to a third party, an ebook distributor, and they all have their set template, and you have to send it exactly as it is, otherwise it fails ingestion. There's ways that you can probably, I can't think of what the little shortcuts are called in tech terms, but from your actual Excel, be able to export it in that way as well.
Yeah, that's right. There'll be CSV files, and every person they have their different ways of doing it. We have a question from one of our online watchers first. I'll take that first, and then question from the floor. So, hi, I'm Kevin from Philippine National Book Development Board. Thanks, Kevin. We have a lot of your colleagues here in person as well, so nice to meet them. Congratulations on the launch of the Singapore Book Data. We're at the early stages of our own effort to establish our own. How has Singapore Book Council prepared Singaporean publishers in organizing their metadata? And I'll consider that Book Council and Singapore Book Publishers Association. Not enough. I mean, there's a lot more to do. There's a lot more work to do. So we see this as a journey. We need to stimulate the demand also. But I would say Trina started talking about it 10 years ago, as we heard. I think I gave my first presentation on metadata to the publishers in 2013. So it's just a long process. And, you know, we,
I think I've been talking, actually I had that when I was at James Bennett, there was actually in the early 2000s, a joint venture with Nielsen Book Data. So I had to talk data for a long time to publishers who at that time really didn't want to talk data, but about getting their feeds, getting that set up all the time. So yeah, I've been actually suddenly realised I've been talking in this space for a long time.
Right, but it's always new, so there's always something new and interesting.
Right the first time.
That another factor here is the ISBNs and the databases behind ISBN. So I had at NUS Press in Booktopia and a couple other websites, my books all started saying Ridge Books, which is one of my imprints, Malaysia. So all of my books were showing up as Ridge Books Malaysia. I'm like, well, I love my Malaysian publishing colleagues, but I kind of want, these books are from NUS Press in Singapore. And so what we found was that Nielsen had somehow categorized our ISBN publisher's prefix in the wrong way. So it was automatically we were sending the right data, but Nielsen was using the ISBN publisher's prefix in the wrong way. So we tracked it down, they fixed it, and since then, it takes a while to propagate through the system, but now Booktopia in Australia will. Yeah. Did we have a question from the floor?
Syed Ali from Pustaka National. I'm a Malay language book publisher. So when you talk about key data, metadata, do we need to include English translations of our works also inside the metadata? And what about bilingual books? Do we need to put English, Malay, Chinese, or Tamil in the metadata?
Well, I think that's a great question. I mean, this is where Singapore, I hope, will be setting the standards as well. I think certainly the biggest online booksellers, you know who you are, we know who they are selling in many languages. So it makes sense to be in the language that your readers are in. And I hate to say that you should always put English, right? So I won't say that. I don't think that's correct. But of course, if you have a bilingual book, you've got to find a way to make sure that people know that it's a bilingual book. What better way to do that than to have the description in 2 languages? I think that would be wonderful. But I'm saying that from my instinct. And I think it's a kind of thing where we had better try it out, see what the reactions are, learn from it, talk to our colleagues in the different parts of the supply chain and figure it out. And that will be something that I think Singapore publishers can add to the system. Probably we can learn from the Canadians too, because they're very bilingual in the way that they promote their books also between English and French. Any other questions? You mentioned there a little bit, I think I heard the word Instagram and social media. What are you seeing? What are you seeing as the trends and how important is social media for book marketing? And what are you seeing as the trends there?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I think with social media, it depends very much on the channel that it's in and about what the audience is looking for in that channel and what your call to action is in that channel. So if you might find, I think Instagram's very visual, and of course then you've got your reels and your stories and other sorts of things. So it's a visual platform. Twitter's really fast, good information. I feel like Facebook in Australia, you've got to get the right campaign, but I think social media should be part of all of your campaign strategies, and then picking the right channels in which to put content and the right channels to sponsor content and do promoted ads, and being able to select your audience. Actually, I'm doing the workshop tomorrow, and one of the things is you have to be able to define your audience in order for social media to work really well. So if you can't define your audience, it's not really the place to be. Yeah. And TikTok, that's not, BookTok's a whole.
Yeah, and we're like book talk. We had that conversation earlier. Book talk, dancing with books. I don't know.
Or crying. You got to cry over your books.
Okay.
Got to have an emotional reaction.
Okay. But so you can't fake it. The
No.
publisher can't cry over their own books.
No.
Okay. Rachel, this question is coming to you also as my former distributor. And considering we're here with the support of ESG, how can we export Singapore books to Australia better?
That's a really good question. Suddenly everyone in the room goes, oh, hello. I think the challenge is in Australia is getting a distributor in the first place, because most of the DCs are full, they're not taking on. It's like, and also about volume, if they do take on a title these days, it needs to have a lot of volume, but there are still small ones, and there's still, I think Booktopia Publisher Services has actually filled the role that used to be footprint in books, ASTAM in years gone by, with university and special and academic and professional. But these days when you talk distribution in Australia, they are all talking about Ingram Spark being global. But that's not great for commercial to get it into the bookstores.
Can you tell us a little, what is Ingram Spark? They've come up a few times.
Oh, they don't actually have, yeah, they're not here.
No, they're not here.
Oh, well, think about Lightning Source. Is Lightning Source?
No, they're
Okay.
not here either.
Oh, okay. So when I mentioned POD, everyone.
Yeah.
So Lightning Source set up in Australia a while ago now to do print on demand, and a lot of the academic and professional publishers, of course, went straight to that model because they're e-focused or database or platform or subscription focused. So what was the full question?
Oh, yeah, just to describe a little bit this
about
model.
the market.
Spark.
And so the opportunities, I think it's been a little hard, but there are smaller distributors, and if you've got the right sort of book for the market, plus if you've got foreign language books or bilingual, big audience for that, particularly in capital cities. And there are distributors in Australia that will specialise in that. But to go back to Lightning Source has Ingram Spark, which does the full sales and marketing sort of package, particularly for small presses. It's all print on demand. They also do ebook fulfillment as well. And it's a pretty good service because it's global. Hewlett Packard, HP, was also doing something similar with POD. And so it doesn't matter where you are, you don't have all of those shipping costs, and it's no inventory costs, it's to order. I do know one of the distributors in Australia that when she takes a book, she'll even take on some of the print on demand titles. The issue with that is that people don't return them. You know, they are to order. But she'll sometimes do a small print run herself, partnering with the publishers. 4-colour books and things like that can be a little bit problematic. But I think that there's a couple of different options, and but you need to also have probably some volume. If you've only got 1 book or 2 books, to find a distributor is pretty much, well, you'd know. It's pretty hard now.
I'm crying here as she's telling me this, because she used to be my distributor and I got another one, and I don't have one in Australia at the moment.
I think that's the thing. I do think there's opportunities. I do think it's about talking to people at international book fairs to talk about different ways to approach it. Don't think of it as the way of, I have this book, you must take 50 copies. It might not work anymore that way. They may want to do, as I said, some runs themselves or do print on demand, or it might work the other way. I think it's just trying to find a distributor that will take you on, or if not, if Ingram Lightning Source is a solution, you still need to do the marketing in Australia. Right. So they'll take care of the supply chain for you, but then how do you create the demand? So.
Yes, and just as a footnote, that's exactly where NUS Press is at the moment, getting the Lightning Source print on demand for Australia going. The other advantage, right, I don't know if you guys have heard, but the cost of shipping and the delays are a super issue for us now. The cost of sending books to the US, in our case, has gone up. It used to be maybe $1 a copy we'd send by sea. Now it's $6 or $7 a
Yeah,
copy.
it's the same in Australia.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And also with COVID, I think the impacts of the pandemic, particularly with bookstores, they are going with the major DCs. So there's only really 3. They go with the big sheds as such. So, and the reason for that.
DCs stands for?
Distribution centres, sorry. Distribution centres, the sheds, as other people call them. But there's, they share distribution. And I think that if somebody's booksellers don't want to have any risk, they want to have the commercial titles, but also you think about it, if there's 7,000 titles being released a month, a bookstore's only going to take a small percentage of that anyway. So, but yeah, they want it to go through the main ones.
Yeah, so
Reduce risk.
we're publishing so many books. We've got so many great authors. There are a lot more books. There's less space in the bookshelves. It's a challenge. I do want to give a shout out. There is also a Singapore local player in print on demand, a joint venture between Ethos Books and Hope Printing. Can someone remind me the name of the website where you can go for that? So there are experiments to start to do this kind of more automated book on demand. And of course, our printers in Singapore have been doing this short run digital printing now very effectively on a global export basis.
And with paper being in such a shortage, you know, having a print on demand solution, it doesn't work for every book, but for some books it works quite well. It's about getting that, it's managing the balance between, it's also sustainability, there's other sorts of things, but it's managing the commercials so you get it right.
Unfortunately, it doesn't really work for color books. So our beautiful art books are not quite there yet, but the printers promise us any day soon they'll have high quality digital colors.
For a lot of those, if you can work, I think we're seeing a lot more trends to, if they can't find a distributor in Australia, they find ways to work with the online booksellers, getting their data, metadata out to them and make them discoverable that way.
So Australia would be very similar to Singapore. The online bookseller, overseas online booksellers are major players. And so we don't really like it because the money that we spend there stays overseas in UK or US. Typically, it'd be nice if it was helping the local ecosystem, but it's still a channel for a lot of books to reach readers. So we're not going to, that's a good thing.
But maybe there's some partnership opportunities when Frankfurt gets back up and other book fairs here locally to be able to talk to people that may be in that space. Right. Maybe some partnership.
And of course, we're pushing very hard that the big players will accept our books in Singapore and use their distribution power to send them overseas. So we keep knocking on Amazon's door and Book Depository's door about that. Any last questions? We're almost out of time. It flew by. But any last questions? Okay, I think we've...
Actually, and apologies. No, I did actually. I realised I didn't put my last page up, which had all my references. So if anyone wants anything, just come and see me later. And I did have my contact details on that presentation as well. So
let me add that Rachael is a consultant now, and so she'd be very happy to talk to any of you about solving problems in the book trade.
I'll be here for a while. Thank you for inviting me.
So Rachael and Peter, thank you for that. Please stay on the stage for a while. I'm just going to make a few announcements of what I've been complained by National Library that I like to sell Koyo at all NLB event. If you like to join us, we're going to have the we're going to have be present at the Frankfurt Book Fair. So if publishers who would like to join us at the Frankfurt Book Fair, please look out for our secretariat. We're also going to the IPA Congress in Jakarta in the month of September. So if you'd like to know any of this information, please feel free to approach our secretariat. We're going to end this session. Thank you very much for your time. But before we end, we'd like to invite our guests, Mr. Ng and Ms. Kerr and Mr. Maxport to come up for a photo taking together with Rachael and Peter. Can you come up, please? So, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of the session. Thank you for attending this, and please visit our website bookdata.sg, and please help to promote Singapore literature. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, just take note, Rachael will be giving a workshop tomorrow. So, social marketing through social media. If you'd like to find out, what time is it, Rachael? 9:30 at the Imagination Room. Check out the website afcc.com.sg. Thank you very much.